My name is Michael and welcome to a new tutorial. Today we are going to move on with our actions and we are going to check the GAction. But before we learn this, thing means that you, or better say it implies that you understand what GMenu, GSimpleAction and GActionMap are. For this I'm strongly suggesting you to watch those playlists before and then to move on to this one, which I'm going to introduce you today. The widget, or better say the interface, which I'm going to introduce you today, it is called GAction. It is an action interface and its description says GAction represents a single named action. So the main interface to an action is that it can be activated with GAction activate. We will see about it. This results in the activate signal being emitted. So an activation has an G-variant parameter which may be null. The correct type for the parameter is determined by the static parameter type, which is given at the construction time, and an action may optionally have a state. We know already, and in which case the state may be saved with GAction change state. We know that already because we had to work with that. So this call takes a G-variant. Anyway, GAction is merely the interface to the concept of the action as described before. Anyway, the various implementation of action exists, including GSimpleAction, which we already learned, and so on. And of course, there are GSimpleAction group of course as well, which I'm going to introduce you a little bit later in another playlist. So that being said, let's move on and let's see what we have here. The first function says GAction name is valid, which means with the help of this action function you can check if the action name is valid, which means it indeed accepts only alphanumeric characters, which means it also plus and a dot allowed. All others are not, and the action becomes invalid. So let's see, this is the first thing which I'm going to call. But before I call this, let me introduce you the actual code which we have here. We have the main function, which basically we are monitoring the startup and activate signal. In the activate we are creating our let's say window with the title GAction, it will be its name, and the startup function. Inside this function basically we have the main menu. We put the file menu inside it with 3 items, which is the first one is the new, which is the item name, and then we have the detail action and the target, or better say the attribute, because that one it is an attribute and not a target. Anyway, those 3 items, they are created with a create item function right here. As you can see, GMenu item new with the item name, or better say label, detail action, and of course we set the attribute, the target attribute as well. Okay, the next thing what we have the actions which we are creating. Basically these actions which we were creating inside the GActionMap playlist, so you better go there to check it before you come here for explanations and so on. So at this point we can move on. Now let's see, from the last GActionMap video we still have the GActionMap lookup, because we need to check if there is a function called select. If that is, then it should be printed on the screen. Here I forgot the comma, not a comma. Okay, so now let's see, double quote. If everything looks good, as you can see the action select was found, which is good. Okay, now because we have this one, basically we can move on with our GAction. So the first function, like I said, it is called GAction name is valid. So let's see, I'm going to say if GAction name is valid, our action name, in this case we need a name, so I'm going to do something else. Let me comment a little bit. GAction const gchar const action name, and the action name at this point should be select. Action name should be select. Let me compile it and run it for a second to be sure that everything works fine. action name. What? Let me see where. Is a read? Yes, of course. It is a read only, which means we need to create it at the time we declare it. Okay, now let's see if everything works fine. And everything works fine. Now that being said, we can now check if that action basically is a valid one. So which means I'm going to do something else. I'm going to say right here, if GAction name is valid, which means if it's true, then gprint we have a valid name. Else gprint wrong name was provided. Now let me compile it and run it, and if everything looks good, then we have a valid name should be printed, and says we have a valid name. Now of course a valid name is, even if you type big letters or capital letters, it will still be we have a valid name, but instead of, as you can already notice, we have only a valid name, but we have no action found because it doesn't match. Now if we do something like 2 underscores, which is not a valid action, then we have wrong name was provided, which is good. Now because everything works fine, we can move this part right here. Oh, sorry, not there, wrong. We can move it in here, and now because everything looks good and the select function, now we have a valid name and the action name was found, both printing, which means it's good. Okay, because it's working fine at this point, I'm going to stop to this one, and the action was found, it should be printed. Now let us move on with the next function. The next function is called GAction get name, which it's already introduced right here. It says queries the name of the action. So in other words, it returns the name of the action, which means it is a const gchar. You don't need to free it, and you find the name of the action like we did already here. Now the next function, let's see, let us check if this one it is enabled or not, and I'm going to do it right here. If action get enabled our action, so in this case the select, gprint the action is enabled, or else and here will be the gprint, let's see, is not enabled. Now let's see what do we have right here. It says now the action select was found and the action is enabled. Now because it is enabled, let us activate it. So the next function which I'm going to introduce you, it is called GActionActivate. It says activates the action parameter, in other words, must be the correct type of parameter for the action. For example, the parameter type given at the construction time. So if the parameter type was null, then the parameter must also be null. If the parameter gvariant is floating, then it is consumed. So in other words, this function takes an action and the parameter. So let us work with that. At this point, I'm going to comment this part and this part for a second, and here we are going to create something. But before I do that, I'm going to call the GAction enable activate. I want to show you something. When I'm going to click to close, basically I'm activating this item. When I'm activating it, then the activate signal will get called, and so on. The let state was open will be printed, and the new state is closed will be printed as well. The same behavior, you can do it programmatically and with the help of this function. So let me show you. It will be the action, and the parameter. Now let us create a parameter, GVariant parameter, and the parameter should be created with GVariant new string, and here we are going to say close, because in the example I was pressing the close. So at this point, when I'm going to compile this program, it will basically activate the close item with the GAction activate function, which is the same like when you are clicking the item yourself. Watch. You see, the last state was open, which is true. The new state is closed, and it is closed. You see, and everything works fine. So basically, this is how you will work in such cases with GAction functions, which I provided already. Now I'm going to stop for this moment, and we are going to proceed in the next video with the next functions. That being said, thank you guys for watching. If you like it, please subscribe, share with your friends and neighbors, and until next time, see you guys.